Hi, this is Kirk, the bariatric carnivore. Why do we get fatter as we get older? And this is a really good question for a lot of us because, that's really somewhere in about our 30s and 40s. We really notice that it is tougher for us to lose weight. And is there a good scientific reason why? So I want to give a great shout out to Dr. Michael Leeds and his really good email newsletter. It's free. It's called The Arrow. And I'll include a link down below, but this guy is fantastic. I think he's kind of a national treasure for, he wrote the book Protein Power, has been a leader in the low carb community and was really one of the best original thinkers we've got out there. He's a retired physician now. Phenomenal stuff. But anyway, he wrote about it in his latest issue of The Arrow, and I'm going to summarize parts of it because I think what he said really deserves a lot of attention. Now, what he realized that, look, it boils down to three basic reasons why it is difficult for us to lose weight. Number one is just how we do our diet and what we're watching. Number two is how well our body handles glucose control and insulin. And number three is the quality of our liver and just how busy we're keeping it. So let's take a look at all of these things separately. Number one, let's look at the psychological aspect. When you are really beginning a diet program and it's new, you have a tendency to really pay attention to a lot of the details. Because it's new, it's a new way of eating, you're following these new steps, and as a result, you're paying a lot of attention to everything that you're eating. And unfortunately, what happens is we get older, we have a tendency to kind of go through a shortcut system in our own mind. It's kind of like what we drive home. When we first start driving, we are really paying attention to every detail, and we know we have to look at each street to decide whether we're going to turn or not. But as we get older, we just kind of go by rote, and we just, there's frankly sometimes that I've driven home and hardly even remember the drive because it's just something that I've been doing so many times over the years that I just wasn't paying that much attention to all the details. Well, the same thing happens to our diet. We're kind of in this thing, we know that we're basically keto, low carb, carnivore, whatever we're eating, and we just don't pay that much attention to it, and we just kind of go, and we graze on a piece of candy or something like that, and we don't realize that starts adding up. It's only when we really stop and think and hold ourselves accountable and get very strict on our diet that we're going to get the type of results. So step number one, if you're not losing weight, really take a look again at your diet and be hard on yourself and decide whether you have been really paying attention to your diet or you've just been kind of going through the motions. And that is certainly one part of the process. The other one is, in that same vein, are you snacking? Are you grazing during the day? See, if you think about it, a car that is doing 55 miles an hour, and they keep that steady state is actually the most fuel efficient. And you're going to be really, going on all cylinders if you stay steady. The problem is if you're averaging 55, because some of the time you're doing 30 and some of the time you're doing 80, you got a problem. That up and down thing makes a car highly inefficient, and the same thing happens with our bodies. So grazing can certainly be part of why it is difficult for us to be getting the type of results we want as far as weight loss is concerned with a low carb approach. So then these two kind of go hand in hand. That's part of the psychological aspect. The other aspect is the fact that as we age, our ability to control glucose and insulin go down pretty dramatically. We're just not as efficient. We become more insulin resistant, which is a concept which is our ability to be able to get insulin out of our system, how much insulin our body secretes, etc. So there's a new study that just came out, this study right here, which talks about and shows just graphically just how bad we are as far as we age to be able to control glucose and insulin. The question is, why is that happening? And this is where it gets really kind of fascinating to me, which is where it comes down to the liver and how liver health really does affect our weight. See, one of the things that people have always kind of wondered, and it's only been made clear really in about the last decade, is how does the body get rid of the insulin? Now we know that certain things, the body dumps a bunch of adrenaline hormone into our system because we've been scared. And we get the kind of the shakes as that our body clears out that extra adrenaline. So we're kind of familiar with that concept. And the liver, kidneys, other things help pull that extra adrenaline out of the bloodstream and help us get down to normal. And too much adrenaline can actually create shock. So it's a very powerful hormone. Well, insulin's also a very powerful hormone. And when we have too much of it into our body, one of the things that insulin does is that it causes the body to store excess energy, usually in the form of glucose, as fat. So if we're not clearing out insulin, if you eat carbohydrates, sugar, stuff like that, your body secretes insulin to get the extra glucose out of the bloodstream. And if it doesn't clear it out, then it's going to keep storing stuff as fat. The problem is this: where does the body clear out most of the insulin? 70% of it is cleared out by the liver. I got bad news for you. After about 25, 30 years of age, your organs are going to get less and less efficient. The good news is if you're between like 30 and 40, you probably haven't really noticed that your liver efficiency is down. But after 40, you're going to start to notice it. And therein lies the problem. You start having you have a less efficient organ. But at that point, you're probably starting to load it up even more. Because now, at most people, after the age of 40, they start taking more medications. And the liver is going to be prioritizing getting those medications out of the blood and detoxifying itself. So that's the major job of the liver, is clearing out a lot of things the body doesn't want. Medications being one of them. And that can not only be prescription meds, but also things like Motrin and stuff like that. These are also things that the liver has to work to get rid of. And if you've got aches and pains and joint pains and stuff like that, and you're taking lots of ibuprofen, guess what? Your body's working overtime to try to get rid of that. Add to that things like coffee and caffeine. So if you're putting in caffeine, your liver is working to detoxify that. Then throw in alcohol, which is the number one thing the body is going to try to get rid of, because that is a toxin to it. So the body is going to be working to get rid of that alcohol out of your system too. So it's already working harder because of where you are in age. You're probably drinking more coffee, more alcohol, taking prescription, non-prescription medications. The liver's working overtime, and it's not as efficient. And guess what gets the low priority? You've got a less efficient, overworked liver, and it'll get to the insulin when it gets to the insulin. And as a result, it isn't clearing it out as quickly as it did when you were younger, which goes along with the study that I mentioned earlier that shows that our ability to clear insulin gets worse as we get older. And our glucose control gets worse as we get older. So is there a solution to it? Well, yeah, there is, frankly. And it goes back to the psychological aspect too. They all tie together. See, if you really want to lose weight, you're just going to have to be stricter with yourself as far as watching your diet, keeping the carbohydrates down, which means when you pay more attention to it, you reduce the amount of carbohydrates, you're going to naturally reduce the amount of insulin, which is going to make it easier on your liver to clear out all the insulin. And look, if you can cut down the caffeine, get rid of the alcohol, and reduce the amount of prescription and non-prescription medication you're taking, it's going to make it easier to lose weight. This is the peculiar cascade that it comes from getting healthier and losing weight. It just keeps getting easier because each system starts to get more effective. For instance, okay, when you go low carb, you're going to reduce the amount of inflammation in the body, which is going to reduce the amount of need for taking things like Motrin, ibuprofen, and stuff like that, because you're just not going to have that arthritic feeling in your joints, and that pain goes away. So you reduce the amount of that drug in your system, which gives your liver extra capacity, which means you're going to be able to clear out also insulin faster, which means your body's going to be able to lose weight faster. It all ties together. I mean, part of this is not like, oh, I can point to a particular study and say this. I'm just making good, necessary inferences based on a lot of information. So if you understand the insulin resistance model and how that is what really causes us to really gain weight at the end of the day, the more insulin you've got, because the amount of carbohydrates you've got is going to, because you've increased the amount of blood sugar. Look, your body can only have a couple of teaspoons of glucose in the bloodstream at any given point. It's going to store some of it in your muscle, but if your muscle is full because you haven't exercised and it's got too much, then it's going to start storing it as fat. That's what insulin does. It gets rid of the extra glucose out of the bloodstream. So, and the only way you're going to be able to get rid of that insulin is really 70% of it's going to get done to the liver, and if you're overloading your liver, you're stuck. That's why we keep gaining weight more and more as we get older. Crappy liver that's getting older, less efficient, and we're overloading it as it is. All ties together. So if you want to get healthier, just reduce the amount of carbs. If you can keep them down to 20 healthy carbs a day, get rid of the processed junk food, you're going to be doing significantly better. It makes it easier on the liver. And the more strict you are on your diet and cut down the grazing, the better off you're going to be. This is Kirk, the Bariatric Carnivore. If you like this message, if you like what we're talking about, please hit the like and subscribe button. Join this tribe. Leave comments down below. Help me grow this channel and reach more people. I try to put out a new message every single workday. I will talk to you soon.